Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
We're back from last week interesting experience.
Education.
Raya, tell the audience a little bit about that experience.
We had a great time. First of all, thank you for tuning in last week where you got to hear our interview with Maggie Williams, which was terrific. And you could hear the crowd in the background the whole time. That was not something that we were as used to, that there was constant action and things, and it was just a really good experience. We got a lot of conversations with people. I had a great experience.
And for those of you out here who gave us feedback, we want to thank you for that as well. I like the emails coming in. And with that, what do you say we give them the introduction?
One of the big conversations we had with a lot of people last week was people coming up to us saying, I don't know what to do. I want to be a good ally. My child has come out, or I have a loved one that has come out and is trans or is transitioning. Or we heard the story on the other side. I'm trans and I'm really having trouble bringing my loved ones along with me. They want to be good allies, but they're not sure how to do it. We thought this would be a perfect time to address that. And so, Dad, we thought we'd have you share some of your experiences. What advice would you have as a parent that has gone through me transitioning to help others? What can they do to be a good ally?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do. And if I give you a list, which I plan to do, that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to do everything in there. But I think the takeaway comes from the fact that you want to try to really get closer together, to either be as close as you were before, or possibly, like you and me, Raya, even closer. And that can happen. I will tell you that when you first came out, you've heard this in earlier podcasts, that I didn't reject the situation. I embraced it in saying, I'll either accept it or I'll lose you. You've heard that in these podcast listeners many times. And I like to repeat it because it's that critical. But acceptance is only part, really only part. And my first acceptance was really, I'll accept you. But I'm not sure I'm willing to be seen in public with you. I'm not sure I want to tell anyone else about this. This will be our secret, okay? Kind of that. I mean, we never said that. I never said that to you. But that's how I felt in the beginning. But now that it's been almost 8 years, I have moved along. I've moved along on that line to a point where I'm not just accepting. I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of what you have accomplished. I'm very proud of where you are today. I'm very proud of you're willing to take that difficult step that I now understand. I didn't understand it in the beginning. I didn't know how difficult that was for you. But looking back now, I can see every step of the way was something you thought, I don't really want to do this, but I have no choice. Imagine that. I don't really want to do this, but I have no choice. It's kind of like if I were out in the desert and I'm starving to death and all there is there to eat is bugs. I don't really want to eat these, but I have no choice. If I want to live, I've got to do this. That's probably a pretty bad analogy.
I don't. It's maybe not so bad though. I mean, that is a little bit how it feels. It feels like there is no other choice. Or maybe the way that I might think of it is like pressure. You have pressure that you hold back and you hold back and you hold back and you do everything you can to try to hold it back, but eventually it's a losing battle, and you can only do it at tremendous cost of just exertion, and eventually you get too tired and you can't hold it back any longer. And I think that's kind of how I felt. And I never wanted to be the person that, you say that you say, and I appreciate that so much, that you accept them or you lose them. For me, I never wanted to be out in a place where you had to worry about losing me. And yet I can't change who I am. I can't turn off those pieces. And I got to the point where when it was finally coming out, it was because I had tried everything already to make sure, before it got to the point where you and I were talking about it.
Yeah.
I had already tried everything so that we wouldn't have to talk about it, because I didn't feel any better talking to you about it. In fact, I've never told you this, I don't think, but when I was in therapy, when I was first dealing with these, as my therapist, as I said, this is too much. It's too difficult to deal with. And we imagined a scenario. And she said, can you imagine yourself having transitioned, living as a woman, spending time with your parents? And I thought, that makes me feel so ashamed. That would be the hardest thing, is to spend time with my parents that way. And that's how I felt immediately. So I felt a lot the same feelings. And what I discovered is much the same that you discovered, that when it finally happened and I realized, well, this is me being who I am, it's not me putting on some kind of a silly mask. It's me being who I authentically am. And once I realized that I was accepted by you, it was much easier to come and to spend time, because I realized that you accepted me and I was not being just some silly person. I was being who I was, but had tried so many years to stop being.
What you just heard is what I'm going to recommend to you, and that is educate yourself. If you're out there and you've got an LGBT plus person out there, and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to become an ally? What should I do? How can I accept all this? You have to educate yourself. And the first way you educate yourself is by listening to the other person without being judgmental. They're just telling you the truth. They're just bearing their soul, and they want you to understand it's not a choice. I didn't understand that for quite a while. In the beginning, it was always one of these things like, well, maybe we can negotiate. Maybe you could do it just here and just at this point, and those kinds of things. It took me a long time to come around to that fact. But there are so many ways you can educate yourself. I'm giving you one example there. And in fact, that example is not what people normally think of when they think about educating themselves. What do they think of instead? They think about going out and finding many resources that are available online, like articles, or maybe there's videos, there's books that can help to gain a better understanding. What's different about that, Rye, you've said in an earlier podcast, if you've met one trans person, you've met one trans person. And that's true. So the books, if you read a book, you're going to read somebody's story. It may not be the same as everybody's story, but you begin to get a picture. You begin to get an idea. You try reading more than one book. Try to read them from different people's perspectives. And that will begin to give you the picture of how people are coming to their decisions and why they're coming to that. I can't imagine anybody out there who was just having a great life and going along and thinking, maybe I'll just change. No, that's not how it goes, does it, Raya?
No, it certainly is not.
Yeah, you can't just think, oh, well, I'm going to change for no reason at all other than I think this is different. And that's one of the things I began to understand. When you begin to understand by educating yourself, it helps pull you closer.
One of the biggest things that I have appreciated so much about how you approached our relationship together is you started from a place of respect and of love, of true love. And I was recently looking at some tools that people use for helping groups of people to get along, and there are some tools that you can have where, if somebody gets out of line, that you can do something to let them know, hey, this is an issue, and and you put these rules on the way that the group works. But as I've been looking a little deeper into it, I've discovered that all of the stories that I've heard, if you only have the rules, it breaks down, because bad actors will find a way to follow the letter of the rules, but break really the heart of it. But when you come to the relationship and you say, what I really care about is making sure that we all get along and making sure that we maintain respect for one another, it almost doesn't even matter what rules you bring to the table. Now, there are certainly things that we had to discuss, and so that you had to understand, and I had, that we had to negotiate together. But those all came naturally because you approached me and I approached you also with just a spirit of, we want to get along, we want to preserve the relationship. And if you don't have that as primary, these other things are going to all really be meaningless. But when that is number one, a lot of these other things will just start to fall into place naturally.
So another thing you can do that is going to be able to help you is that you have to understand that everyone's journey is different. No two people are exactly alike in their journey. Reading books, watching videos, coming up with things like that, the educating yourself thing will help you to realize that and know that it's all different. So the second thing I'm going to suggest that is really critical is something we just gave you an example of. Listening. Just listen to the other person. Don't interrupt them. Let them tell their story. Let them tell you where they're at, why they're there. And if you let them talk long enough, they will open their heart to you. They will tell you the truth, not something you want to hear. They will tell you what you need to hear. And that is critical. So when you get a situation like that, it helps you to become a better listener and a person who is much better at understanding. Ask them questions about their life and about being LGBT plus. Ask them and let them tell you. Let them talk as long as they can. And it is a part of your education, what you need to know and understand. And that is, I would say those first two things I'm giving you are the first two critical steps in really becoming a loving family again. And it works both ways. Yes, many times people that don't understand will reject the person coming out. But there are also situations, heartbreaking situations, where the people that are doing the rejection are the people who are coming out. And that's really tough for those of us who are allies. They might even reject it to the point where they cut off all communication. They go to ridiculous amounts of things like moving and not letting you know where they went, or changing their phone numbers. Those kinds of things happen. It is not common, but they happen. And when they happen, you can sit there frustrated saying, well, I can't communicate. I don't know what to do. Well, the first thing you could do is to begin by really learning more, accepting more. And there's a lot of other ways I would suggest to do that as well. You, of course, have to respect their identity. If you're still communicating with them, you have to be supportive in every way that you can. But there's a lot of other communication there that might be one sided, but there are things you need to do. There are things that you can do to help out.
I think it can sometimes be hard. Now, you did a really good job with this, I feel like. I don't feel like there was ever an issue, but when you and I were talking, but even still, there were a lot of things where you were surprised you didn't know what you needed to know. And I think a good analogy that we can all understand, if you've lived for a while, you've gone through where somebody has had a really difficult health situation. And you know when that happens, they all of a sudden have an entirely new set of needs. And it stops being, and that moment of the relationship stops being 50-50 give and take. At that moment, the person that's going through the health issue needs you. They need you to stop telling them how you want to do things, because they have a whole new set of issues that they're trying to navigate. And they might say, when I'm going through, when I get up in the morning, one of the really difficult things is I'm thirsty right away, but it's hard for me to get over and get a drink, and you could really help me by bringing me a glass of water right away. Okay, well, this is a new thing, and so I can go ahead and sacrifice that way. And it's easy to think when you're in that space to think, well, I'm sacrificing really a lot here right now. Can't you sacrifice back for me? But in that moment, when you're navigating this new thing, you really need to think of it, and we all do, just like, this is not unique to any of these situations, but anytime any of us deals with a new thing where we're navigating, that person, by necessity, kind of has to take front stage for a little bit until you figure out how to navigate that, and then you move on. And I think you and I can both say that there were a lot of times where I said, I really need you right now, early on.
Yep.
But I don't think we have that anymore, because we've navigated all of those things, and now we're back to how things are, how things have always been.
Well, I can tell you what you're really saying there, and we will both testify that this is the case. It might be difficult in the beginning for both parties, but eventually the sun comes out, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It always gets better.
It
always gets
It sure
better.
does. One of the things you can do also is another way to learn a lot is consider a support group like PFLAG. And that can be very helpful to you. That allies getting together and learning from each other on how to navigate a new situation. And that's really helpful. The more you can do, the better off you are. Some people have sought counseling, and I would recommend it. If you feel that that's something that you could use, check it out. It could be helpful for you. That's a thought that if you don't know where else to turn, consider that.
And I can tell you, I've spoken with a number of LGBTQ individuals that have been struggling with issues with their family. And frequently, I will hear them say to me, I wish that my loved one would go get some counseling so that they could understand how to be a better ally for me. This is not just theoretical. I can think of 1, 2, 3, 4 people that have said that exact thing to me, really wishing for and yearning for that.
They may really just not understand. And I think that often is the first hurdle with people. They have one set of ideas about something that maybe this is wrong and I just, there's no way I can accept it. Well, the only way you're going to be able to accept it is to begin to understand it That's why you have to go out and really study the issue in any way that works for you. Speak to other people who've gone through similar situations only to discover. I know one of the things that some people would consider to be a roadblock is that their first thought is, this isn't normal. But it is. It absolutely is. I will tell you, there's nothing abnormal about the LGBTQ community. I will tell you, I know that. They're just people doing what they do. There are some people who think that I'm abnormal because I'm left-handed. I'll tell you, I am as comfortable moving my left hand as you are moving your right.
Right. That is clearly not the reason why you are abnormal. You know, it has been very clear to me in hearing all of these conversations. It's a reminder that this is not the only issue that's going on. That relationships, you've always got lots of things going on. And so in addition to the fact that you're dealing with trans issues, you're also dealing with just human issues. You know, Kenny's always spending time on his 67 Impala that he, spent all that money on, and all he wants to do is tweak that thing up. And, so that there's constant, and you could throw out dozens of issues like that people have just in the course of relationships. This is one, if things are already difficult, this can make things extra difficult. And that's where spending that time is that much more important.
As you move on in your journey, try to get comfortable enough that you will attend an LGBTQ event of some type. You'll learn something there when you go. You'll discover that there are people there that they're just like you. Now, I'll admit there's some pretty odd ducks that you'll see at some of these things. I'll tell you, there's some pretty odd ducks at any place I go.
I was thinking about that when we had this last weekend at the event that we were working a table, and I have worked a table with you in, I bet, dozens of different shows over time. And every one of those has odd people.
Yes.
When you were working in the coin industry,
yes,
there were a lot of odd people there that really got into these coins.
Uh-huh.
And when we worked in the magazine where we were helping doll collectors, there were certainly some very odd doll collectors.
Oh, yes, there certainly were.
In every show or everything that we've ever been a part of, there are always odd people.
There are odd people at fishing events.
Yes, there are.
There are odd people at restaurants. There are odd people. So to think, oh, I'm going to go and see all these people and they're all normal. Normal is what you define as normal, And they may be a little different from you, but that's everywhere you go. I'm telling you, the universe of the LGBTQ community is no different than the universe of your community. It's right there. It's the same thing. So learn to accept it as it is, and don't judge the entire community by one or two odd ducks. Because if you do, you can reject a whole lot of other communities that are part of your life. So keep that in mind. I think, Raya, you're a pretty normal, pretty normal girl. You pretty much are pretty run of the mill here, as far as I'd say, and no different from any other girl I know.
Well, it's like they always say, everybody is normal until you get to know them.
Yeah, that's right.
And you think about any single person you know, and that person is not exactly normal. No, nobody is. Think through any single person. And I can tell you, for your LGBTQ loved one, when they're in that community, they think, wow, I really appreciate the fact that these people, the people that are weird here, are weird in the same way that I'm weird. And when we were at, when we were at the event, I went and I'll do a little excursion here that I thought was a little bit funny, but I went and I bought myself a blue wig.
Yes,
And
you did.
and I loved it. I thought it was so fun. And that is exactly the kind of setting where people with colored hair are. And I came home and I showed my kids, and they all looked at me and thought, "What are you doing?" And and I felt a little self-conscious when I was around them, but you guys didn't say anything, and I appreciate that. And while I was in that environment, I felt like I fit right in here because that was the same kind of different as me.
I give you a great example of you may or may not think that I'm a normal kind of guy, and that my wife and I are a normal couple. We just came back from a wedding that we went to in Japan. After the wedding, uh, our close friends who got married spent a couple of days with us, and we walked around and looked at the different stores in downtown Tokyo. And as we were walking around, my wife and I happened to come across in one of the stores. Uh, they were selling the glasses with the fake nose and the mustache. So we bought one for all of us. And I gave them to our Japanese newlyweds, and we wore them, and we had a ball with them. They were really fun.
I didn't know that story. That's terrific.
Oh, and we have the pictures. We have the pictures to prove it. So it was really fun. There were 5 of us, by the way, and every one of those people, when we put with the glasses and the nose and the mustache on, they all put them on. And they all wore them as long as we did. And when we took them off, they took them off. And
Then they said, "Okay, good, we can be
Yeah.
done now."
But it was a lot of fun. So
That
the
is
point
fun.
is, if you get to some kind of an event or something, attend it and know that there are people there that are there. We're all the same. We're all the same. We're all different, and we're all the same, and that's okay. So help trying to identify with these people as you would anything else. So those are some things you can do to really become an ally. But you got to work at it. You want to become more and more of an ally. You get to the point where I'm at now, which I have been an ally now for about 7 years, or maybe 6. But now I'm at the ally point where I speak up if somebody says something that I think is offensive to the LGBTQ community. I'll speak up. I think that's when I feel like I'm getting to the point where I'm a defender because I am part of you. I'm part of this community too. This community is it's another part of my circle of friends. It's another part of my social circle, and of course my family as well. And I speak up and defend it.
That means so much. And to have that positive influence, there is nothing that beats that. Well, we certainly hope that we are a positive influence for you as you begin your week. We're so grateful that you tuned in, and I hope that you got something out of this, that you are inspired to make the most of your relationships, both the relationships with your LGBTQ plus loved ones and of everybody in your life, because really, people are what matter.
You know, when we come to the end of our life, it doesn't make any difference how much or how little money we have, or it doesn't make any difference about how big is your house, how many cars do you have, any of those things. It all comes down to relationships. The relationships we have, that is our life. When we're on our deathbed, what are we going to be thinking about? Yeah, I made another $1,000 doing X. No. It's all about the relationships, and that's why it's critical we stay together.
And we'll leave you with that. Thank you for tuning in this week. We will talk to you next week, and we hope that you have a positive week.